Most of us over the age of 55 want to do more than just survive. We don't want to be ignored. We want to be part of something. We want to make a difference. We've so much experience that we would like to put to some use. In these programs, we're going to explore how to empower ourselves and broaden our perspective on life in order to create value and connection.
Many psychologists talk about 3 key stages in the development of our worldview: dependent, independent, and interdependent. These are particularly relevant for those of us in the second half of life, as it's quite possible to miss out on one of the stages. So we're going to go on a journey from the beginning of our lifespan to the present day. From the time of our birth, we've been aging. In fact, we did a good deal of aging before we were born. We started this journey as a single cell, which formed when a sperm fertilized our mother's egg. Around 3 weeks later, we had a beating heart. Our physical and mental being developed rapidly until around 9 months later, we had no room to move in the uterus. For those first 9 months, we were totally dependent on our mother, and then we were expelled down the birth canal into the next bit of life.
If we were fortunate, we grew into a child that was inquisitive, curious, and able to open up to the wonder and mystery of life. When we were young, we saw things mostly in the short term, and back then, it seemed to take forever for birthdays to come around. Time was in slow motion, and we had an endless amount of it. As children, we had a small radius of perception of the world, with little awareness of the complex web of connections that run through life. Up to our teenage years, we were mostly dependent on others for our basic physical and emotional needs. By the age of 10, we'd already passed the optimum time to learn a new language, so the aging process was well and truly underway. We became more aware of the outside world and how we fitted into it. Our radius of perception widened as the time started to go just a little bit quicker.
By the mid-teens, the education system tried to encourage us to decide whether we were going to pursue the arts, the sciences, or a trade. And for a generation of girls who grew up in the 50s and 60s, there was the art and science of home economics. We were all being encouraged to specialize and define our skill set. The question society asked was, how are you going to fit into the adult world?
At the age of 18, we were statistically at the height of our brain processing powers. As we entered the adult world, we became aware that the emotional and physical dependence that was acceptable as a child was no longer appropriate. In a grown-up world, being vulnerable and dependent was often seen as a weakness. We learned to stand on our own 2 feet. The independent stage of development is the belief that you can get what you want through your own effort. This stage might be closely associated with the ego. Through mastery and competence, we became self-sufficient. The struggle to become a strong, independent adult may have involved hiding some parts of ourselves that no longer seemed appropriate.
Most of us had to find a way to fit in. We took on roles and labels such as wife, lover, provider, carer, parent. There were many different compartments to life, such as home, work, family, finances. We learnt to compartmentalize and see parts of life as separate from one another. Identities or labels may have been useful when we were younger adults, and they may have helped us survive and be effective in the world. Hopefully, as we mature as older adults, we can see that some of the identities from our younger years might have had their uses at the time, but do they still serve us now? Some of the labels that were created in our younger adult life can be hard to let go of. In this world of independence, we can be constrained, but the very world we have constructed for ourselves, or we've allowed others to construct for us, to realize our full potential, we need to go beyond those labels and identities. We need to explore beyond the world of separation and independence into the third stage of development, which is interdependence. Interdependence is the understanding that all life is interconnected. It's a holistic point of view where we see things in the context of the whole. Increasingly, scientists are seeing that nothing truly exists in isolation, and that the reality is that human life, as well as animal and plant life, are all interconnected in a complex web. This is not some fancy theory from cosmologists and particle physicists. It's the fundamental reality of existence. And to be aware of this in our daily lives leads us to a state of greater wisdom. As our physical power wanes in the second half of life, there is the possibility to connect with something far greater than our individual self. It's in this connection that our true inner power lies.
But we don't automatically move into this last stage of development. We can get stuck in the world of independence, so as we age, our perspective on life becomes more narrow and limited. Many aspects of modern life encourage us to see ourselves as separate from our environment and nature. Without an open and curious mind, the world of independence and separation can lead to isolation and loneliness.
To view life through the lens of independence and separation is like a mouse scurrying in the undergrowth. The field of vision is small, everything is close up, and it's impossible to get a perspective on what's really going on around you. But as we get older, there's a chance to view things differently. In the interdependent stage of life, we can rise above the undergrowth and have a vision like that of an eagle flying over the landscape. We see the big picture. Life is much greater than just our individual survival. To see life through the lens of interdependence is to realize that we are an integral part of the living organism that is planet Earth. This is an holistic approach to living and increases our well-being now and in the future.
In this stage of life, we become more aware that our actions, thoughts, and feelings have an influence on those around us and on the environment. We're part of the complex web of life. Irrespective of our status, wealth, or health, an interdependent perspective can empower and embolden us.
In reality, these stages aren't rigid and linear. There are times when we are dependent and times when we require an independent frame of mind. But as we grow older, there is great benefit to consciously expanding our vision in later life. There are many ways we can intentionally increase our connection to the great mystery of life, so that instead of feeling separate from the world, we sense that we are an integral part of the big picture. One way to broaden our vision is to listen to another person with an open heart. We can actively listen to someone by letting go of our individual agenda and opinions in order to hear them on a deeper level. We can be attentive to them without trying to do anything. It may sound like a simple exercise, but it can be profound. It can change our perspective and increases our connection to the complex web of life.